Templeton, big boss at WSP, one of the great advisory consulting engineering firms of the world and in Australia. Welcome to Western Sydney Unfiltered.
Great, thanks very much. A pleasure to be working with you again, Chris, on this. Good to see you.
So you talk about working. We're at an interesting time when the very nature of what working is changing. You employ a lot of people in Australia in what I call the white collar factories. As we're trying to encourage governments who love the term shovel-ready projects and lots of blue-collar tradies down there digging holes, but I'm trying to encourage them that you employ as many people as others too, and to get the planners working, the engineers working, the advisors working is important as well. How's the outlook at the moment from the WSP office in Sydney and Western Sydney particularly?
Yeah, look, I think the outlook is pretty reasonable. We're in a better position now, Chris, I think, than we thought we were going to be back in March. That was quite scary. And I think the reason things don't look too bad is that governments are keeping up their commitment to spending. And if they were turning the tap off, and in some parts of the world they are turning the tap off, then we're seeing real impact. And we possibly, a firm like ours, feels a little bit easy earlier, because as you say, if you're involved in those white collar design skills, if that stuff stops, you've got a problem with construction 6 or 9 months later. So we're obviously cautious, but I think medium term we're feeling pretty good.
Who do you swap notes with? You're running a big firm. It's a lot of people whose families are responsible for the business and keeping them going and projects and clients. Who do you swap notes with? Who do you turn to and talk about the future? Are you able to ring AECOM and Arup and have a chat to your mates, or is it internal? What's your coterie?
Yeah, but for me, one of the great things about being in a global firm, and we're 50,000 people around the world, is every couple of weeks I'm on the line with the heads of Canada, US, UK. I'm probably almost the baby of the business there, because a lot of these groups will have sort of 8, 9, 10,000 people in those geographies. So we see a lot of stuff that's common, and then you can also see where the differences are. Occasionally I speak to the firms we partner with, but I don't tend to speak to our competitors very much, because I like to talk to our clients and I like to talk to my people. They're my priorities, so I really optimize around that. But chatting to clients, I spend a lot of time chatting to people in government, the people who are really letting a lot of that work, also the property developers and also the contractors. And unless the engineers and the contractors work well together, things don't join up. And then beyond that, partly through the work I do with the Business Council, chairing the Infrastructure and Growth Task Force, there you bring in some financial services, accounting, legal advisors, and kind of a broader range of people, but all thinking about what the future looks like.
So WSP applies its trade across servicing a number of sectors of the economy, largely in the utilities, construction and broader areas. Where are the hotspots for you? And in a Western Sydney context, is it all about a couple of big train lines at an airport and the big mega transport projects, or you're seeing other green shoots on the road to recovery?
Yeah, look, I think the sorts of things you mentioned there, Chris, are the heart of it. You put in a new rail line or a new road, a new airport, and that generates an awful lot of activity. So I think, you look at the Aerotropolis, and that's looking at generating perhaps 200,000 jobs across the Westland Park City, which is fantastic, and they're good jobs. So I think that forms a nucleus. But then around that, we're doing a lot of work in Western Sydney around wastewater treatment and around water in general, and you're a long way from the coast. So what does that mean about outfalls? What does it mean about clean water? What does it mean where you've got climate change occurring to then be able to have enough water, also power, renewables, environmental concerns? So we find that once you get these big developments, there's a lot of tentacles that run out from that.
Are you finding that governments are amenable to the concept of better infrastructure, not just more? Are we going to come out of COVID, out of recession, the post-COVID recession, with a better offering of utilities, infrastructure, transport? Or are we just digging, keeping people busy, keeping the fluorescent shirts,
the high-vis jackets,
high-vis in work?
Look, we're getting there, Chris, but I think we've got a way to go. And I think particularly running up to COVID, the whole industry was moving very, very quickly. And sometimes projects would come out really where speed was the imperative. And you sometimes look at some of the risk allocation settings and
Yeah.
just, oh, why don't we just spend a little bit longer getting this right? But the opportunity through COVID is with the investment that's going on to really reform the stuff we want to reform. So you can come out of this in two ways. One is you keep the cash going and you tick the box. The other is you talk about, say, planning systems. Why wouldn't we say, let's have a world-class planning system out of COVID, because we're having to look at stuff fresh at the moment and how you speed it up. So let's take this opportunity to say where are all the gaps and let's do it in a world-class way.
You mentioned your work with the BCA and the Infrastructure Task Force, and the other great thing pandemics allow for, or recessions allow for, is some big thinking, and not business as usual. Put your public policy wonk hat on.
Yep.
What's some of the big ideas that ought to be embraced that are a little scary other times that you wouldn't get away with? I've seen this accelerated planning come through now that Rob Stokes is driving. What are some of the really big stuff, apart from your standard IR issues? What are things we've always been afraid to touch, but we just might give it a shot in a time of crisis?
Yeah, look, I think often what we forget to do is we forget to look out 50 years. And we look at every 5 kilometres of railway track and it's very exciting. But if you're looking at 50 years, why shouldn't the population grow? If it's a great place to live and work and do business, and you get these clusters where people working well together, we're probably going to have 100 kilometres of underground railway,
Government announced 2 more lines next 40 years this morning, the Southeast metros to join.
Absolutely fantastic. So I think we need to be looking at 50 years from now, what we want is a society where the cities really work. And when we look at it in a piecemeal way, you get a start-stop of investment and all the bits don't necessarily fit. So why don't we just take that 50-year view? And one of the...
Can that work in a political cycle? Can we see maturity enough across politicians to stick to the same plan?
It's very difficult. It is very difficult. And I think each political party, has an absolute right to choose the project it wants. What I'd like to see is more support for a kind of a reasonably standard amount of infrastructure investment. So we talk about a health system, we talk about an education system, we don't talk about an infrastructure system. And we also talk the defence, say 1.8 to 2% of GDP being spent on defence. But on infrastructure, we talk about this project and that project and that project. So if through the political cycles, we could say that X% of GDP really needs to go on infrastructure to keep the stuff we've got in good nick and then to build new towards a greater vision, then I think we'll do a lot better. And things like city deals really help because that kind of is a bit more enduring than a political cycle.
You've got hundreds of people in Australia whose job is city shaping in all ways, advising governments, advising contractors, clients, cities on how to build the physicality, not only how to lay the pipeline and the tarmac, but also the some of the softer parts of city shaping design. What would be you rarely do people get the chance, like the Western City particularly. There's Western Sydney for us as the central city, the older post-war, Parramatta Olympic Park, Hurstville to the hills kind of suburban post-war development, which needs to be retrofitted. But let's take the imagination to the outer west, the Western City, Parkland City. It must be a hell of a challenge. It must be fun in a way to have these opportunities that come along to shape entire growth precincts like that. That they be, should they be green? Should they be tarmac? Should they be well connected? Should they be all those bits? Did your team get a little excited being involved in that type of challenge?
Absolutely. We get very excited about that because what we're all about is creating fantastic livable places and in a sustainable way. And if you look at, say, the UK or the US, you get all sorts of towns that have grown up along the major routes. It's not just London and the rest. There's a lot of very viable towns. The US is full of them. And I think what we've got, you're talking in Western Sydney sometimes about the squinters. They drive to the CBD with the sun in their eyes and they drive home. The CBD is going to be important forever, but it's not as important. And why shouldn't you be born somewhere in
COVID given that
Sydney?
Has COVID given that a bit of momentum?
I think COVID's
remote campus.
I think COVID has given that some momentum, Chris. It's very hard to know exactly where it's going to settle, but I think what's for sure is there's a heck of a lot of jobs, particularly white collar jobs, where people say I don't need to be in the big city every day. I might be there sometimes. And frankly, if you're sitting somewhere, west of Bankstown and you've been commuting into the CBD every day, if you do that 2 days a week instead of 5, you're probably going to have a better life and you're going to stimulate the economy back where you live. So,
should be worried about the future of cities. Are we going to be a nation of hermits?
Look, I don't think it'll go that far personally. I think things will swing back. I mean, you and I, Chris, were at the same dinner a few weeks ago that you kindly organised with the Premier. And while it felt fully weird to start with the social distancing, by halfway through, I thought...
And a boardroom dinner with microphones.
That's right, a boardroom dinner with microphones. But by halfway through, I'm just there thinking, wow, that what you pick up for that face-to-face contact is terrific. So I don't think we're going to see cities die. People like to cluster. There's something in human nature that wants to be in around other people. So I think we'll find some happy medium, but I don't think we'll go back to just how we were.
Yeah. From a Western Sydney perspective particularly, what are some of the big projects that the WSP team are focused on at the moment, either working on or pretty keen to be working on?
Yeah, well, we're very involved with the airport, with the independent verifier there right through. So very, very heavy involvement with the WSA, which is terribly exciting. I mean, you don't get to build a new airport every day. So that really gets our blood going. You've got the new metro lines, M12. As I'd said, a lot of work around, wastewater treatment.
I think the roads package are less understood in Western Sydney. There's a major M12, this was MacArthur, there is an M9, Northern Road diverted. We all had a lot of focus on the M4 and the M5, but there's more action happening in the outer west on roads. Massive amount of tarmac going to be laid.
Absolutely, and I think there's a lot to come. And if you take that sort of 50-year vision about how Western Sydney would look, and people being born there, educated there, going to university there and getting a really good job there and retiring there, we need to be building the infrastructure to make that a possibility. So, we've got all sorts of work and quite a lot around placemaking.
You're sourcing a lot of staff out of the region too now?
Yeah, we have. We've got our office in Parramatta and that's coming along well. And, a lot of the work that we're doing, it may be being done from other locations, but it's helping design or bring forward things from Western Sydney. But you just look at the university and it's putting out all these fantastic graduates. And I think, for us as a business, we'd just see our continuing growth of real sort of feet on the ground in Western
Sydney. And WSU is soon to open a new joint engineering hub with UNSW in Parramatta. So
yes, indeed.
The two unis coming together, just as Sydney Uni wants to roll out its lands at Westmead for more medical engineering training. So I think that's coming. Let's just, towards the back end, look at the impact of COVID. Hasn't only been economic transformation on the way on our businesses. It's been on us as leaders, as workers, as parents, as citizens. Where do you 9 months into this awful thing, coming up, or if you blend, drought, bushfires, pandemic, recession, hell of a year 2020. Where Guy Templeton different in your midpoint report on you? How are you looking at things differently? If anything, has it changed?
I think, and I try to look at it positively, Chris, in that out of all the places you could be in the world, this is pretty darn good. And as tough as things are, being in Sydney is fantastic. And we've got a lot of people in Victoria and they're doing it tougher than we are in New South Wales at the moment. That second lockdown is much harder.
How do you give them a hug as a boss? How do you do that?
It's so hard. But something we did do last week, we had it was the concept of a safety stand down. We had a day which was all to do with mental health. So we did 45 minutes at the start I participated in. And people could self-select into Zoom meetings. For instance, parents that had young kids. They all have similar issues. People who are caring for others, elder parents and these sorts of things, they had similar issues. So we had, I think, 14 different groups during the day where people could just get in and feel that sense of community and just share notes. And we've got some very actionable stuff coming out. So it's not the same as being there, but we're really trying to work hard on just trying to kind of help people feel included on the way through.
So you've had the Victorians are in lockdown again. There's talk of whether we go back in or not. When we were in the lockdown, what was, we're all spending a fair bit of time on Netflix and streaming and things like that. What took your fancy? Were you a Tiger King kind of guy? Were you a Michael Jordan? Where did you?
I got hooked on The Bureau on SBS On Demand. So it's a French series about the French intelligence service. And I'm not great with languages, so normally anything that's subtitled, I'm out. And somebody recommended it to me.
I struggle with English, let alone anything else.
That's right. Yeah, I'm an engineer. We're not well known for our way with words. But I watched the first series of that, and you know what it's like. You can get stuck. So I'm now somewhere in series 4 of that, but I'm enjoying that.
If you like the Try Berlin Station in English about the CIA bureau in Berlin, there's a couple of series of that. It's fantastic on SBS on demand as well.
Okay.
You really enjoy it, and you get to listen, you don't have to read it as well. Or the Money Heist, where they it's all dubbed in French, but dubbing's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
What do you most miss? What do you want to do when this is all over and world's back? I mean, boardroom dinners without microphones would be my thing, but where do you want to travel? What do you want to do?
Yeah, I've got people in somewhere around about 50 offices across Australia and New Zealand. Part of my job is getting around and seeing them, talking to people, interacting with people, finding out what they're up to and how I can help, and going and seeing our clients. And it must say, it really gets to me that I can't just hop on a plane and go around and see the operations and the people that I'm responsible for leading. On a personal side, I quite like a holiday. And last year...
God knows we all deserve it.
That's right. A mate of mine at uni, his parents were Greek, and he inherited this little family shack on this small Greek island, in no way a tourist island, subsistence agriculture, very, very basic. And I went and spent a week with him last year, and it was just a fantastic...
Yogurt, honey, and goat.
That's right, it was exactly that. And when I think about what I'd like to do once international air travel lifts again, I'm going, geez, I wouldn't mind going and switching off for a week there.
Let me know if there's a shack next door. It sounds bloody marvellous. Well, Guy, thank you very much. I assume when you get together with all your global guys, Australia looks pretty good.
It looks
all of
pretty
our
good.
problems, we said we're economically doing pretty good. And as we said the other night, a bit of local leadership has gone a long way in that, and also corporate leadership. So you're one of a graph of leaders who, to hear you talk today, is largely about the welfare of your staff is, I think, one of the things we are all changing, and we've all had a reminder. It's not been how do we sack them all and reduce costs and keep the profit up. It's about how do we work with them and keep them together and collaborate. So, good luck and Godspeed, sir.
Great.
Best of luck to WSP.
Always a pleasure, Chris. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Guy.